Welcome back to AP US History. We've been talking about the Cold War and the Truman presidency. Uh, Probably Harry Truman did more, at least the first president that really advanced the cause of civil rights. He felt that African Americans were being treated unfairly. It's interesting that he comes from the Midwest. He has a sense of fairness about him. He wants to see African Americans treated the same as anyone else, and he's going to do as much as he can during his time period. And you have to understand that there was a lot of opposition to any kind of reforms advancing African Americans, and he will desegregate the armed forces. He will see to it that a committee is formed to investigate how to get more African Americans into government and to end segregation, the Jim Crow laws. But this is going to be an uphill fight. Um, this committee that he put together published to secure these rights call for desegregation in American society, anti-lynching legislation, no more just taking people out to a tree and hanging them without a trial, into poll taxes, certainly the segregation of the armed forces. During his presidency in 1951, the 22nd Amendment was passed to limit presidents to 2 terms. FDR had been in office for almost 17 years. He's going to pass away. Truman is going to take his spot. But they felt that this might lead to a dictatorship in America, so they're going to constitutionally have a term limit of 2 terms, maximum of 10 years that a president can serve. This cartoon shows the irony of African American fighting in Korean War and in World War II and World War I, but not experiencing the same rights as white folks, not being able to go to the same restaurants, swimming pools, bathrooms, drinking fountains, what have you. But he wanted to wipe out the segregation in America. Of course, you can see in this newspaper article, posse bent on lynching, searches woods for prey, and this is in the South, so you can see the contradiction there of justice for all. The anti-communist crusade, the Red Scare, comes back. Americans were certainly afraid of communists and the sympathizers. They were afraid that spies had been infiltrating the government. Alger Hiss, who had been working in the FDR's administration, denies that he's a communist, but later on, records will show from the KGB that he had been working for them. The Rosenbergers were a couple who passed on the H-bomb plans to the Soviets, and they were executed for that. Fear of nuclear war with the Soviet Union, they get the atomic bomb in 1949. The spread of communists around the world, people were just lived in fear. This was the second Red Scare of the 20th century. If you remember, the Creel or the Palmer raids had been trying to get rid of anarchists in the 20s, and now this comes back in the 50s. There was a committee formed in Congress, the Committee on Un-American Activities. It indicted Alger Hiss on espionage. He will get 6 years for perjury, but not convicted for espionage, even though he were a spy. The House on Un-American Activities, created in 1945, was to root out communists wherever they were in our society. The Red Scare is this tomorrow, and this shows the communists killing people, America falling under a dictatorship. Americans were quite paranoid about this. This shows a committee that was formed to root out communists in America. Nixon got his start on this committee, who will be president in 1968, searching and trying to figure out in every walk of life, government, military, entertainment, what have you, trying to seek out the communists. Americans spying on Americans. Remember that the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act during World War I where it was encouraging Americans to spy on their neighbors. So too was during the Red Scare in the late 40s, early 50s. You were to be ever vigilant because the communists were everywhere. The communists went on. The committee went after public figures in Hollywood, particularly liberals and members of the New Deal during FDR. Of course, you have to understand that during World War II, we were friends with the Russians. It isn't until after the war that this all turned sour. Alger Hiss was accused of passing secrets to the Soviets, but it was never proven. He will spend some time in jail. The KGB released records in the 1990s confirming that he was one of their agents. Truman will institute what he calls the loyalty program. This was to counter the House on Un-American activities with anti-communist, his own anti-communist program. That is, looking for the communists in the government and in our society. Part of this, if we go back here, federal loyalty program, under this Justice Department order, it created loyalty boards, authorized dismissal of people considered a bad risk. Of course, it depended on who was judging the risk. Government established lists of dissidents and organizations that were on the watch list. And millions of men and women who work for the government will have to take a loyalty oath. In fact, teachers in public schools will have to take this loyalty oath. The Attorney General identified 90 disloyal organizations who were, and the organizations were not given the right to prove their innocence. It was just they decided that there was enough evidence on their own to call them a dangerous organization. So the FBI was given approval, almost a blank check, to go out and look for suspects. The Loyalty Review Board investigated more than 3 million workers. 3,000 were either forced to resign or fired. The loyalty oath increased the demand for employees, especially teachers. Many felt the civil liberties were being suppressed, infringed upon. Government workers forbidden to criticize foreign policy. You weren't supposed to read socialist books, attend foreign films, and get this, advocate equal rights for women. Apparently that was a no-no. McCarthyism springs up. Joseph McCarthy is going to lead a crusade in the Senate to root out communists. He makes broad accusations about government officials and Hollywood actors and producers and directors as communist sympathizers. In fact, he accuses the Democratic Party of being in cahoots with the communists. Almost no one was safe from his accusations, and eventually he's going to come to an end of his road. Wanted to try Truman, remove him from office for being too soft on the communists. This shows a picture of Joseph McCarthy, his crusade against communism. J. Edgar Hoover, who was the director of the FBI, was convinced that his agency needed to root out communists. Edward R. Murrow took on Joseph McCarthy, claimed that he was going after innocent Americans, accusing them without a fair trial, and eventually he will prevail. McCarthy, in 1954, will accuse some generals of being communists. Later, his fellow colleagues will say that that's enough. At the end of the Red Scare, the Sputniks caused a lot of Americans to believe that we were inferior to the Russians because they had put a satellite into space, and the next thing you know, that there would be missiles coming from outer space. John Birch Society was formed it was an ultra-conservative group, believed that communists were running the government. Arthur Miller, The Crucible, was a allegory that points out, parallel this witch hunt that they were conducting in the government to root out communists. Here shows the Sputnik, 1957. They had a jump on us in terms of space technology. Of course, Americans didn't want to be second to the Russians, and so therefore they will be a big push to put someone into space from America. Truman's Fair Deal, essentially, it was a carryover of the New Deal. He wanted better housing and full employment, a higher minimum wage, better farm supports. He wanted an extension of Social Security to other groups. He wanted to increase the rights of African Americans. The only major successes were raising the minimum wage, public housing, and extending old age insurance benefits to more people. In essence, Truman was able to preserve the New Deal program, but wasn't really able to really increase it. Marginal improvement for blacks, although he tried, it was an uphill battle. And we'll stop